The first time I heard the truth about my mother, the bass in the nightclub hit so hard it felt like my ribs were trying to escape, and my brother leaned close to my ear like he was confessing a crime. He said Dad didn't lose her. He said Dad hid her from both of us, and he did it because of me. There are certain places where you expect your life to crack open. Hospital hallways, funeral homes, police stations, a quiet kitchen table with the lights off and the coffee gone cold. Not a nightclub on a Friday night where strangers grind against strangers under strobing lights, and the air smells like spilled vodka, sweat, and perfume that's trying too hard to be a new beginning. That night was supposed to be easy. I told myself I deserved easy. Work had been a grind, my sleep had been a mess, and the last few weeks had left me with that dull ache behind the eyes that comes from pushing everything down until it starts pushing back. So I'd agreed when Alex texted, "Let's go out." Just one night. No family drama. No old ghosts. Alex had always been the one who could convince me. He was younger by 2 years, but he'd carried himself like he'd been born older. Sharp, restless, always scanning the world like it was hiding something. Sometimes I envied that. Sometimes it terrified me. When I walked into the club, the DJ was in full control of the room, turning strangers into a single moving organism. The lights cut everything into slices, blue, purple, white, then stitched it back together in a blur. My shirt stuck to my skin almost immediately. The floor vibrated under my shoes. I found the bar and ordered something I didn't even taste. And that's when I saw Alex. He was standing at the far end of the bar with his shoulders tight, head slightly lowered, eyes roaming the crowd like he was searching for a face he hoped not to find. He didn't look like someone who came out to forget. He looked like someone who came out because he couldn't hold something inside his chest anymore. I tried to approach it like normal. I forced a smile, took a sip of my drink, leaned on the bar like I belonged there. "What's up?" I said. "You look like you just saw a ghost." He gave me a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. The laugh was a reflex, a habit, the kind you throw out when you don't know what else to do with your face. "Eric," he said, and even with the music, I heard the tremor in his voice. I think I just found out something about our family, something I never imagined I'd hear in a place like this." The way he said it made the room tilt. The music kept pounding, but it suddenly felt distant, like it was happening in another building. The laughter around us sounded wrong, like static. I looked at Alex's eyes and saw something I'd only seen a few times in my life. Real fear, not the kind you perform, but the kind that changes your skin. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "You're scaring me a little." He swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. His eyes darted around, like he was worried someone might hear even in all that noise. "Remember that secret Dad had," he said. "The one we always thought was just a rumor." My stomach tightened. Of course I remembered. In our family, rumors were like dust. They settled into everything. You could wipe the table clean and come back the next day, and the dust would be there again. Stubborn, familiar. The rumor about Dad was the one everyone pretended not to speak out loud. Something about Mom leaving, something about it not being as simple as we were told, something about Dad knowing more than he admitted. I'd heard it in fragments at holidays, in the half-silences between aunts when they thought I wasn't listening, in the way conversations changed the second I walked into a room. I'd never chased it too hard. Not because I didn't want answers, but because answers felt dangerous. Like if I dug too deep, I'd find something that would make me hate him. And for most of my life, hating Dad felt like sawing off the branch I was standing on. Alex leaned in. Turns out it's real, he said, and it involves you. My throat went dry. Me, I said. What are you even saying? His voice dropped into a whisper, almost lost under the DJ's beat. He lied about where Mom went, Alex said. He didn't just lose her, Eric. He chose to keep her from us because of you. For a moment, my brain refused to translate the words. Because of you. That phrase has a way of detonating a person from the inside. It takes everything you believe about your past and shakes it until the pieces don't fit back together the same way. I stepped back, the neon colors smearing at the edges of my vision. It felt like someone had punched me in the stomach and left their hand there, twisting. What do you mean? I said, and my voice came out too loud, too sharp. Alex's face tightened. He looked like he'd been rehearsing this confession for weeks and still didn't have the courage to finish it. The whole family was part of it, he said, and now his words came out in quick bursts. And you were the one he was protecting, he said. He said you were the reason she had to leave. My ears rang. Protecting me from what? From her. From the truth. From myself. That's insane, I said, because it was the only word that fit. You really believe this? I wouldn't, Alex said, his voice steadier now, if I didn't hear it from him. I thought you'd want to know. I thought you'd be on my side. On my side. The phrase lit something ugly inside me. Because it implied sides. It implied a war I didn't know we were fighting. It implied Alex had been carrying something alone and only now decided to throw it at me in the middle of a crowded club, like it was a drink he didn't like and wanted to pass off. On your side. I snapped. You think telling me that was a good idea? You think I wanted to hear that? Humiliation crawled up my neck, hot and sticky. Not because strangers were listening. They weren't, not really. In a club, everyone is in their own world. But I felt exposed. Like my life had been grabbed by the collar and dragged into the light. What was I supposed to do? Alex shot back. Just sit on it, like Dad did for years. That's when it clicked. The tense holidays. The forced smiles. The way Dad's jaw tightened when someone mentioned Mom's name. The way he'd always reminded us, too often, too insistently, that families stick together, that we don't air our mess outside the house, that loyalty is everything. It hadn't been wisdom. It had been control. My anger surged, but it didn't know where to land. It ricocheted between Alex and the idea of Dad, between the memory of Mom and the empty space she left behind. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I demanded, and my voice broke on the last word. Alex's eyes flashed. Because I didn't want to believe it myself, he said. I didn't want to believe Dad was capable of holding something so huge over us. The beat of the club pulsed like a heartbeat, and I suddenly hated it. It felt disrespectful, like the room was dancing on top of my childhood. How could you betray me like this? I said, and I didn't even know what I meant by betrayal. Betrayal of my peace, betrayal of my ignorance, betrayal of the fragile story I'd been surviving on. Alex's eyes flared. Betrayal, he repeated. You think this is betrayal? I've been wrestling with this for months. I didn't know who to turn to. My hands shook around my glass. You had to turn to me, I said. We're brothers. Family first, remember. Alex's mouth twisted like he'd tasted something bitter. Family isn't always the way you want it to be, he said. Sometimes it's ugly. The words hit harder than he meant them to. Because they were true, and because I'd spent most of my life pretending they weren't. I stared at him. Under the dim lights, his face looked older. The smirk he wore sometimes, The one that got him out of trouble was gone. This was my brother stripped down to something real. So what's next? I asked. I just accept this. Go home and pretend like nothing matters. Not pretend, Alex said. Fight back, but you can't if you don't know the truth. And this truth is supposed to help me. I asked, almost laughing at the cruelty of it. Alex stepped closer, desperation spilling into his eyes. Yes, he said. The truth can help us clear our names, make Dad own up to it. Maybe Mom can come home. Maybe we can be whole again. Whole again. The phrase dug into me because I realized I'd never actually believed that was possible. I'd built my life around the absence. I'd made it normal. I'd learned how to celebrate birthdays without her, how to grin in family photos while feeling like the frame was missing something essential. How do you know she even wants to? I shot back. Alex's expression shifted, softer for a second. Because she deserves to know her sons, he said. And you need to understand why she left. Think about it. I looked around at the club. Couples dancing. Friends shouting over music. The DJ waving his hands like he was conducting an orchestra of chaos. You're telling me this in a nightclub, I said. Not exactly the setting for family revelations. Alex shrugged, and a hint of a smirk broke through the tension. Guess I wanted to hit you where it hurts, he said. In the stupidest possible place, I muttered, and even through my anger, I felt something else. The familiar sibling dynamic, the way we could insult each other and still mean I love you underneath. Maybe, he said. But now you're thinking, aren't you? I wanted to deny it. But he was right. My mind had already started tearing through memories, like an animal looking for escape. Every time Dad told us Mom was gone. Every time he used that word instead of left, or ran, or abandoned. Every time he said, we don't talk about it, boys. It's complicated. I'd believed him, because believing him was easier than suspecting my own father had stolen something from me on purpose. Yeah, I said, voice low. I'm thinking, and I hate it. The crowd pressed closer as people shifted around us. Someone bumped my shoulder and didn't even notice. I felt like I was underwater. Alex leaned his elbows on the bar. His hands shook slightly. He wasn't enjoying this. He was enduring it. We have to face Dad together, he said. This is bigger than petty sibling fights. I stared at my drink, watching ice melt into something weak and diluted. That's what my life felt like suddenly, diluted. Like the story I'd been given was watered down to keep me from tasting something too strong. Let's say I believe you, I said finally. I hated how small my voice sounded in that loud room. What do we do from here? Alex exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. Then we find a way to confront him, he said. Face whatever baggage he has. It might be the only way to help Mom. And if he refuses? I asked. Alex's eyes narrowed. Then we take a different route, he said. We dig deeper, find out what really happened. I found some old documents in the attic last week, things he would never want us to see. The word attic made my skin prickle. Our attic wasn't just storage. It was a graveyard for the things Dad didn't want in daily life. Old clothes, broken furniture, boxes labeled with faded marker like they'd been packed in a hurry. Mom's things had vanished from the house when she left. Not gradually. Not naturally. Overnight. Like someone had done a sweep and erased her. You found documents, I repeated. Why didn't you lead with that? Because I didn't want to hurt you, Alex said, throwing up his hands, frustration breaking through his control. But I'll do what it takes. For you, for Mom. But you have to promise to trust me. Trust him. It should have been easy. He was my brother. But trust is hard when your life has been built on missing information. No more secrets. I half joked, but my smile felt dead on arrival. Yeah, Alex said. No more, just us against whatever comes. We made a pact there at the bar, in the loudest place possible, sealing it over drinks that tasted sweet with our new resolve. And as the night stumbled forward, the club kept moving around us like nothing had changed, while I sat there feeling like my entire past had been lifted out of me and set down on the counter. When we finally left, the cold air outside slapped my face, and it felt like waking up. The street was slick with rain. Car headlights smeared white across the pavement. Alex walked beside me in silence, and the silence wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't empty either. It was full of tomorrow. At home, I couldn't sleep. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun shadows around the room. My phone sat on my chest, heavy like a brick. I kept thinking about Mom's face, though I barely remembered it clearly. I remembered her laugh more than her features. The way her hands smelled like dish soap and lavender. The way she used to sing under her breath while folding laundry. The way she'd call me, my sweet boy, when Dad wasn't around to scoff at softness. And then she was gone. Dad had told us she left because she couldn't handle life anymore. That she needed space. That she made choices. He never said she didn't love us. But he never made room for us to love her either. He turned her into a closed door and told us to stop knocking. I rolled onto my side and stared into the darkness. Because of you. The phrase kept repeating. If Mom left because of me, what did that mean? What kind of child was I, if my presence could drive a woman away from her own sons? And then a different thought slithered in, colder. What if she didn't leave? What if she was taken out of our lives? What if Dad made a decision for all of us and called it protection? By morning, my head felt like it had been packed with wet sand. Alex texted me just after 8. You ready? No. But I texted back, yeah. Dad's house looked the same as it always had. Neat yard, trimmed hedges, curtains drawn halfway like the house didn't want to reveal too much. The air inside smelled like coffee, and that cologne Dad wore when he wanted to feel in control. He was in the kitchen, reading something on his tablet, wearing the calm expression of a man who believed he owned the day. Morning, he said without looking up. You two were out late. Alex and I stood in the doorway like kids again, waiting to be told what kind of mood he was in. Dad, Alex said. His voice was steady, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. We need to talk. Dad finally looked up. His eyes moved between us, assessing. About what? He asked, but his tone already sounded defensive, like he knew. Alex's jaw tightened. About Mom. The room went quiet in a way that felt unnatural, like even the refrigerator held its breath. Dad's face didn't change much, but something in his eyes hardened, an old reflex. I told you, he said, voice low. We don't do this. Yeah, I said, surprising myself with how sharp my voice came out. We do, today. Dad stared at me for a long moment. The silence was thick, sticky. Then he stood up slowly, like he was preparing for a fight he'd avoided for years. You boys don't understand, he said. You never did. Alex stepped forward. Then make us understand, he said. Because I heard you say you kept her from us. Dad's gaze snapped to Alex. You were listening to things that weren't meant for you, he said. That's the point, Alex shot back. Everything was not meant for us. Our own mother wasn't meant for us. Dad's nostrils flared. He looked at me again, and I felt something shift in my chest, a strange mix of fear and fury. "Is it true?" I asked. "Did you lie about where she went?" Dad didn't answer right away. His silence was an answer all by itself. My stomach turned. "Eric," he said finally, and the way he said my name sounded like a warning. This was done for a reason. "There's that word again," I said. "Reason, complicated, protection. You always hide behind those words. I want the truth." Alex moved toward the hallway that led to the attic access. Dad's head jerked. "Don't," Dad snapped. Alex paused, eyes locked with Dad's. "You said you had documents up there," Alex said. "So we're going to see them." Dad took a step forward, and for a second it looked like he might physically stop us. But then he seemed to catch himself, like he knew how bad it would look to fight his grown sons over a staircase. "Fine," Dad said. The word came out like gravel. "Go ahead, dig around in the past, see what it gets you." The attic ladder creaked as Alex pulled it down. Dust hit the air in a soft cloud. The smell up there was the smell of old cardboard and dry wood and years of silence. We climbed up. The attic was dim, lit only by a single hanging bulb. Boxes were stacked like towers. Some were labeled Christmas. Some were labeled tools. Some had no labels at all, as if their contents were too dangerous to name. Alex moved with purpose, like he'd rehearsed this too. He found the spot he'd mentioned, pulled out a box tucked behind a broken fan, and opened it. Inside were folders, envelopes, a sealed plastic bag with papers that looked official. And beneath them, wrapped in an old sweater, was a small stack of photographs. My hands started to shake before I even touched them. Alex handed me the top photo. It was my mother. Older than I remembered. Tired, but undeniably her. She was standing outside a building I didn't recognize. Her hair was pulled back. She looked like she'd been crying, but her eyes were open and focused, like she was trying not to fall apart. In the corner of the photo, a date was printed. 2 years ago. Not dead. Not gone. Not a ghost from a childhood memory. Alive. Recently alive. My vision blurred. I heard myself make a sound, half breath, half broken laugh. "This is..." I started, but the words collapsed. Alex's face was pale. "There's more," he said. I shoved the photo at him and grabbed the folders. Letters. Some returned unopened. Some with addresses that weren't ours. Some stamped with words that made my skin go cold. Confidential. Do not forward. One folder held a copy of a court document with names I didn't know, lines blacked out, a signature at the bottom that looked like Dad's. And then, near the bottom, a letter in Mom's handwriting. I recognized it instantly, even after all these years. The loops of certain letters. The way she crossed her T's. The slight slant, like she wrote fast, like she couldn't afford to linger. My hands trembled so hard I could barely unfold it. I read the first line, and my chest caved in. "My sweet boys." I couldn't breathe. Alex leaned close, reading over my shoulder. His eyes filled, but he didn't wipe them. He looked angry about the tears, like they were another betrayal. The letter didn't explain everything. It didn't tell a neat story. It was full of gaps. But it was real. It was her voice, reaching through the years like a hand through a cracked door. She wrote about danger, about mistakes, about loving us so much it hurt, about being told she couldn't contact us, not directly, not until things were settled. And then the line that destroyed me. "Tell Eric I'm sorry. He was only a child. None of this was his fault." My knees went weak. I sat down hard on a box, dust puffing up around me. None of this was his fault, which meant someone had convinced her it was. Or someone had used me as a reason. Or someone had shaped the story until it served them. Below us, we heard Dad's footsteps. Slow, measured, like he was giving us time to swallow the evidence. I didn't want to go back down. I wanted to stay up there forever with proof in my hands, because proof meant the pain wasn't imaginary. But Alex looked at me, eyes burning. "We're done hiding," he said. We climbed down. Dad was waiting in the hallway, arms crossed. He saw the letter in my hand and his face changed, just slightly. A flicker of something passed through his eyes, fast as a strobe light. Regret, fear, anger. It was hard to tell. Dad was a man who kept his emotions locked behind steel. Alex held up the photo. "Explain," he said. Dad's jaw clenched. He looked like he was deciding whether to keep lying, whether to double down, whether to admit the sin out loud. I stepped forward, letter shaking in my hand. "You told us she left," I said. My voice was low, but it wasn't calm. "You told us she chose to go. You let me grow up thinking she didn't want me, and she's been alive this whole time." Dad's eyes flashed. "I did what I had to do," he said. "That's not an answer," I snapped. Dad's expression hardened. "Your mother wasn't stable," he said. "She made choices." "Stop," Alex cut in. "You can't use that word like a weapon. If she was unstable, why is she writing letters? Why is she trying? Why is she begging for us?" Dad's breathing changed. He looked at the floor for a second, then back at me. "It started with you," he said, and the way he said it made my skin crawl. I flinched. Dad continued, voice controlled. "When you were little, Eric, there was an incident. Your mother was involved with people you don't know about, people who don't let you walk away clean. She tried to leave that life behind when you were born, but those people came back." I stared at him, numb. "What incident?" Alex demanded. Dad's lips pressed together. "There was a threat," he said. "A message. A promise that if your mother didn't cooperate, they'd take what mattered most." My heart pounded. "Me," I whispered. Dad nodded once. I felt cold spread through my body, like I'd stepped into a shadow. "She wanted to run," Dad continued. "But running wasn't enough, so we made a deal. Your mother would disappear from our lives, and in exchange, they'd stop looking at you." My stomach lurched. "A deal with who?" Alex asked. Dad's eyes sharpened. "With the kind of people you don't say out loud," he said. "With the kind of people you survive, not fight." "Why didn't you tell us?" I demanded. "Why let me believe she abandoned us?" Dad's gaze locked on mine. "Because you were a child," he said. "Because if you knew, you'd look for her. You'd ask questions. You'd pull at threads that were meant to stay buried." Alex's hands clenched into fists. "So you stole her from us," he said. "You stole our choice." Dad's voice rose for the first time. "I saved you," he snapped. The word "saved" echoed off the walls, like a lie that wanted to become truth through repetition. "You saved me," I said, voice shaking, "by making me think I wasn't worth staying for." Dad's face tightened. He looked away for a second. And in that tiny moment, I saw it, something underneath his control. Guilt. Because Dad wasn't a monster who enjoyed pain. He was something more dangerous. A man who believed he was right, even when right required cruelty. "She agreed," Dad said finally, quieter. "Your mother agreed." Alex scoffed. "Because you gave her a choice with a knife at her throat," he said. That's not agreement. Dad's eyes flared. You don't know what it was like, he said. You don't know what it costs to keep a family alive. I took a slow step forward. My hands were shaking, but my voice steadied. Where is she? I asked. Dad stared at me. I said, where is she? I repeated, and this time there was no softness left. Dad's silence stretched too long. Then, like he was giving up a piece of his own spine, he said, I have an address. Alex's head snapped up. You have an address, he repeated, disbelief turning his voice sharp. And you never. Dad cut him off. Because it wasn't safe, he said. Because every time I even thought about letting you contact her, I remembered what it felt like to think you might disappear. I swallowed hard. The room felt like it was shrinking. Give it to me, I said. Dad hesitated, then moved to a drawer, pulled out a small slip of paper, and held it out like it weighed 1,000 pounds. My fingers closed around it. It was real. An address in a town 2 hours away. My legs felt weak. Alex looked at me, eyes shining with anger and something close to hope. We're going, he said. Dad stepped forward. No, he said, voice firm. You don't understand what you're stepping into. I turned to him, paper clenched in my fist. No, I said. You don't understand what you already stepped into. You made this decision for us once. You don't get to make it again. Dad's face tightened like he wanted to argue, like he wanted to take control back. But then he looked at us, really looked, and something in him seemed to realize we weren't boys anymore. We drove in silence at first. The highway stretched out like a ribbon into gray daylight. Alex kept tapping his fingers against his knee. I held the paper like it might dissolve if I didn't keep pressure on it. Halfway there, Alex finally spoke. Do you hate me? He asked, eyes on the road. The question surprised me because it was so small compared to everything else. I stared out the window. Fields passed by. A billboard for a diner. An abandoned gas station. I hated you last night, I admitted. For dropping it on me like that, for making it real. Alex nodded. He didn't flinch from it. But you didn't do this, I said. Dad did, and whatever happened back then did. Alex swallowed hard. I didn't want to believe it, he said quietly. I just couldn't keep it to myself anymore. I understood that. Secrets rot you from the inside. They make you mean without knowing why. By the time we reached the address, the sky had clouded over. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like everyone is watching from behind curtains, not because they're suspicious, but because you're new and new is a disturbance. The building was a small duplex with peeling paint, a narrow porch, and wind chimes that clinked softly in the breeze like nervous laughter. My throat tightened. Alex parked. He killed the engine. Neither of us moved for a long moment. Because knocking on that door meant the story would stop being a story. It would become a person, a face, a voice, a moment that couldn't be rewound. Ready? Alex asked. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. We walked up the porch steps. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my hands. I raised my fist and knocked. Once, twice. The sound echoed inside, and for a second there was nothing. Then the door opened. A woman stood there with her hair pulled back, wearing a faded sweater. Her eyes were tired, but they were the same eyes I'd seen in that photo. Her gaze moved from Alex to me. And the moment her eyes met mine, her hand flew to her mouth. Eric, she whispered. Just my name. Just air shaped into a sound. And it broke me. I didn't cry the way people cry in movies. I didn't fall to my knees. I just stood there, breathing shallow, like if I breathed too deep I'd shatter into pieces. "You're real," I said, voice rough. "You're alive," she finished, and tears filled her eyes. "Yes, I'm alive." Alex made a sound beside me, like a laugh and a sob collided. "Mom," he said, and his voice cracked. She looked at him, and the grief on her face was so raw it looked like pain made visible. "My boys," she whispered. Then she stepped forward, hands trembling, reaching for us like she didn't trust the world to allow it. I should have run into her arms. But the years stood between us. The anger, the confusion, the part of me that still remembered being left behind. "I thought you didn't want us," I said, and the sentence came out like a wound reopening. Her face crumpled. "No," she whispered. "No, baby, never." Alex stepped closer first. He was trembling, but he moved anyway, like he couldn't survive another second without touching proof. Mom wrapped her arms around him, and he clung to her like the kid he used to be. I watched them, chest tight, and something in me cracked. Mom lifted her head, eyes on me. "I wrote," she said softly. "I tried. I wrote letters I couldn't send. I begged, Dad said you left," I cut in. Her expression shifted, pain and anger and shame mixing together. "He said a lot of things," she whispered. I swallowed. "Did you leave because of me?" I asked, and the question tasted like poison. Mom stepped closer, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. "No," she said, voice firm. "You were never the reason. You were the reason I wanted to live." My vision blurred. "Then why?" I asked. Mom exhaled shakily. "Because someone convinced your father that control was the same thing as safety," she said. "Because I was scared. Because I made mistakes before you were born that I'll regret until the day I die. And when the world threatened the only good thing I'd ever done, when it threatened you, I thought disappearing was the only way to keep you breathing." Her voice cracked. "I thought you'd be safer hating me than loving me from a grave." Alex wiped his face with his sleeve, furious at his own tears. "So you just stayed gone?" he demanded, and his anger sounded like grief wearing armor. Mom shook her head. "I didn't stay gone," she whispered. "I was kept gone. Every time I tried to push back, there were consequences. Every time I tried to reach out, there were warnings. I was told the same thing over and over. If you come too close, they'll look at the boys again." I stared at her. "Who are they?" Mom's eyes flicked away. "The past," she said. "The part of my life I tried to outrun." Silence settled on the porch. The wind chimes clinked softly. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Life kept going. As if this wasn't the moment my entire childhood was being rewritten. I stepped forward, finally close enough to smell her. Soap and something faintly floral, not quite lavender, but close enough to make my throat burn. "I needed you," I said quietly. "I needed you, and I didn't even know how to say it." Mom's eyes overflowed. "I know," she whispered. "I know." And then I did what I should have done years ago. I let her hold me. Her arms wrapped around me, warm and shaking. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something loosen inside my chest. Not because everything was fixed. Not because the past was gone. But because the truth finally had a shape. We went inside. She made tea with hands that trembled. We sat at a small table that wobbled slightly. Alex kept looking around the room like he couldn't accept that this was where our mother had been living, while we were celebrating holidays without her. Mom told us pieces. She didn't give us every detail, and we didn't demand it all at once. Some truths come in waves, and if you take the full ocean at once, you drown. But we learned enough. We learned that she didn't vanish because she stopped loving us. She vanished because she thought her love was a danger. We learned that Dad wasn't just a victim of fear. He was a man who used fear to justify control. And we learned that Alex's betrayal in the nightclub wasn't betrayal at all. It was the first honest act in a family built on silence. By the time the sun started to drop, the room felt different. The air felt lighter. Not happy, not healed, but lighter. Mom looked at us, eyes tired and bright at the same time. "I don't know what happens now," she admitted. Alex reached across the table and took her hand. "Now we stop pretending," he said. I nodded. "Now we do this the hard way," I said. Together. That night, on the drive home, Alex didn't talk much. Neither did I, but the silence between us was different than it had been in years. It wasn't empty. It was full of new possibilities. And the strangest thing of all was this: the truth didn't feel like a clean victory. It felt like grief finally being allowed to breathe. It felt like anger, finally, having somewhere to go besides inward. Sometimes the twist isn't that someone betrayed you. Sometimes the twist is realizing the betrayal was the story you were forced to live with. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't forgive right away. It's show up. It's ask the question. It's knock on the door. Because silence is the easiest legacy to inherit and the hardest one to escape. If you've ever found out your family's rumor was real, if you've ever had your whole childhood reframed in a single night, tell your story in the comments. Like this video if it hit somewhere personal, and subscribe to Plot Twist Revelations for more emotional stories where the truth doesn't just change what happened, it changes what it meant.